Gray morning light spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows of a luxury penthouse overlooking downtown Atlanta. Marcus Hayes woke on an unfamiliar leather sofa, his neck stiff from sleeping at an awkward angle, his head throbbing from a sleepless night. The smell of brewing coffee drifted from the kitchen, followed by the soft sound of running water. He turned his head and froze. Evelyn Pierce, the 32-year-old CEO of Northline Systems, where he worked as an executive fleet driver, stood in the doorway wearing his white Oxford shirt. Her dark hair was pulled back into a ponytail, still damp from what must have been a quick shower. Her expression was unreadable, a mask of controlled composure that didn't quite hide the uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Her voice came out flat, almost clinical, as if she were inquiring about quarterly earnings rather than her own safety. "Did you do anything to me last night?" Before Marcus could answer, before he could even process the weight of what she was asking, his eyes caught the glow of a laptop on the dining table behind her. A video conference interface filled the screen. 7 faces arranged in a grid, the company's leadership board. They were watching, every word, every gesture, every assumption already forming in their minds. Marcus stood slowly, deliberately keeping his movements measured and non-threatening. He had spent 38 years learning how to move through spaces that were never designed for him, learning how to make his 6'2" frame seem smaller, less imposing, less frightening to people who looked at his dark skin and saw threat before they saw humanity. His throat felt dry, but his voice came out steady. "Ma'am, nothing happened. I drove you home after the gala because you couldn't walk on your own. I helped you inside. I stayed to make sure you were safe. You can check the building's security footage. Lobby cameras from 11:47 last night until now." Evelyn's eyes flicked to the laptop screen, as if only now remembering it was there. Remembering that this private moment of accusation and defense was being witnessed by the very people who held both their professional lives in their hands. Her face paled slightly, but she said nothing. Marcus pointed toward the bedroom doorway visible beyond the living room. "There's water and aspirin on your nightstand. I put them there around midnight. The blanket on this sofa is folded because I used it. My jacket is still draped over that chair because I took it off before I fell asleep. I was here all night, ma'am, but I never entered your bedroom after I helped you to bed." One of the faces on the screen spoke, his voice carrying the authority of expensive legal degrees and corporate power. Vincent Shaw, the company's general counsel, leaned forward into his camera. "Mr. Hayes, I strongly advise you to leave the premises immediately. We've already contacted law enforcement." Marcus nodded once to Evelyn, a gesture of respect that cost him something to give in this moment. He picked up his uniform jacket from the chair, the fabric wrinkled from being draped there all night, and walked toward the door. There was nothing else to say. He had told the truth. What they chose to believe was beyond his control, beyond his ability to influence, beyond everything except the evidence that cameras would either support or condemn. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The hallway was empty, silent except for the hum of the building's ventilation system. Marcus pressed the elevator call button and waited, his mind already racing ahead to what came next. Jordan would be waking up soon at Mrs. Patterson's apartment. She would want pancakes. She would ask him about work. She would look at him with her mother's eyes and see through any lie he tried to tell. The elevator arrived. Marcus stepped inside, caught his reflection in the polished steel doors as they closed. He looked exhausted. He looked older than 38. He looked like a man who had just made a choice that might cost him everything. The screen above the control panel displayed the time. 6:43 in the morning. 15 hours ago, none of this existed. 15 hours ago, he was just a driver waiting in a parking garage, invisible to the people whose lives he facilitated. Content in his invisibility, because it meant he could go home to Jordan every night and be present for the only person who truly mattered. 15 hours ago, Everything was different. Marcus Hayes woke at 5:15 every morning. His phone alarm played a soft chime that he had learned to hear instantly, snapping him from sleep to consciousness without jarring transition. He shut it off and lay still for a moment in the pre-dawn darkness of his bedroom, listening to the sounds of his daughter sleeping in the next room. The soft whistle of her breathing through a gap between her front teeth, the rustle of sheets as she shifted position, the small sounds that meant she was safe, healthy, alive. He pushed himself up and walked to the window. The view from his College Park apartment showed a parking lot, a chain-link fence, and beyond that, the distant lights of Atlanta's skyline. The rent was $847 a month, which was manageable when he worked steadily, but precarious when anything went wrong. 2 months ago, Jordan had needed antibiotics for an ear infection. Last month, the car needed new brake pads. This month, they were behind. On his dresser sat a framed photograph of Nicole, taken 3 years before she died. She was laughing at something off camera, her head tilted back, her whole face lit with joy that Marcus could still remember feeling in his own chest when he had been the one to make her laugh like that. The photo didn't show the hospital bed, or the feeding tubes, or the way her body had slowly betrayed her, cell by cell, until there was nothing left but pain, and then nothing at all. 6 years. Jordan had been 3 when Nicole died. Now she was 9. Half her life spent without her mother. Half her life with only Marcus to teach her how to navigate a world that would judge her before it knew her, that would make assumptions about who she was based on the color of her skin and the absence of a conventional family structure. Marcus turned from the window and began his morning routine. Shower, shave, iron his uniform with the precision of someone who understood that presentation mattered, that a crisp shirt and pressed slacks were armor against casual dismissal. He made coffee in the small kitchen, poured it into a travel mug, and started preparing Jordan's lunch. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, string cheese, a handful of pretzels in a small baggie. The same lunch he packed every day because it was what she would actually eat, because feeding her was more important than variety. The pile of bills on the kitchen counter caught his eye as he worked. The rent notice stamped "past due" in red letters, the utility bill warning of service interruption, the medical debt collectors who called twice a week, politely relentless, offering payment plans he couldn't afford. $60,000 from Nicole's cancer treatment. Insurance had covered some of it, but not enough. Never enough. He had been a shift supervisor at a logistics company when Nicole got sick. Management track, decent salary, a future that looked stable. Then came the diagnosis and the impossible choice between career advancement and being present for his dying wife. He chose Nicole. He would always choose Nicole. But after she was gone, there was no management track to return to, no career path that accommodated single fatherhood and crushing debt and the simple need to be home for dinner every night. Northline Systems paid $78,000 a year for executive fleet drivers. It offered health insurance, dental coverage, a retirement match. The hours were predictable. He could drop Jordan at school, work his shift, and be home by 6:30 most nights. It wasn't the life he had imagined, but it was the life he had. And he had learned to find dignity in showing up every day and doing work that mattered to no one except the people who depended on him. He walked to Jordan's room and gently pushed open the door. She was sprawled across her twin bed, surrounded by stuffed animals arranged in what she insisted was a very important order. A nightlight shaped like a crescent moon cast soft yellow light across her face. She looked peaceful. She looked safe. She looked like everything worth fighting for. Marcus knelt beside her bed and touched her shoulder. "Morning, baby girl. Time for school." Jordan's eyes opened slowly, still heavy with sleep. She blinked at him, processing consciousness, then smiled. The gap between her front teeth made the smile lopsided and perfect. 5 more minutes? Same answer as yesterday. Up and at 'em. She groaned but sat up, rubbing her eyes with small fists. Her hair stood up in wild directions, kinky curls that Marcus had learned to manage with leave-in conditioner, and a wide-toothed comb and infinite patience. She wore pajamas covered in cartoon planets and stars, a gift from Mrs. Patterson last Christmas. "Papa, can I have pancakes?" "It's a school day, baby. Pancakes are for weekends." "But Mrs. Patterson says you work too hard. She says you deserve pancakes every day." Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, his weight making the mattress dip. "Mrs. Patterson is very kind, but we save special things for special days, makes them more special." Jordan considered this with the serious expression of a 9-year-old philosopher. Then her face shifted, something uncertain creeping into her eyes. "Papa, do you miss Mama?" The question landed like it always did, unexpected, despite being asked a dozen times before in a dozen different ways. Marcus reached for the truth that wouldn't devastate her. "Every single day. But you know what? She left me the best part of her. You." Jordan smiled again, reassured for now. "Papa, you're corny." "That's my job." He helped her out of bed and guided her through the morning routine. Bathroom, teeth brushed, face washed, hair combed into 2 puffs on either side of her head. She picked out clothes from the small dresser in her room. Pink shirt with a unicorn. Blue jeans with knees worn thin from playground slides. Sneakers that would need replacing soon because her feet kept growing faster than his budget could accommodate. Breakfast was scrambled eggs and toast, eaten at their small kitchen table while Jordan finished math homework she had somehow forgotten about the night before. Marcus checked her work, found 2 errors, guided her to correct them without simply giving her the answers. Teaching her to think. Teaching her to check herself. Teaching her that the work mattered even when it was hard. She paused between problems and looked up at him. "Papa, there's a homeless man outside our building now. He looks sad." Marcus set down his coffee mug and met her eyes. "What do we do when we see someone hurting?" "We help, even if it's hard." "That's right. Remember that." It was a lesson he had taught her 100 times in 100 different ways. When they passed someone struggling, when they saw news stories about people in trouble, when the world revealed its cruelty and its need, he would kneel to her level and say the same thing in different words. "You don't turn away from weakness. You don't ignore pain. You help because that's who we are, because that's what separates us from the people who choose comfort over compassion." Jordan absorbed the lesson the way children absorb everything, uncritically and completely. She believed her father because he had never lied to her about the things that mattered. She believed that helping was good, that kindness had value, that the right thing was always worth doing, even when it cost something. Marcus hoped she would still believe it when she was older, when the world taught her how much helping could cost. They finished breakfast. Jordan packed her backpack with books and folders and the lunch Marcus had made. He locked the apartment and walked her downstairs to Mrs. Patterson's unit on the 2nd floor. Mrs. Patterson was 73, widowed for a decade, and had informally adopted every child in the building as honorary grandchildren. She watched Jordan before school and after, until Marcus could pick her up. She charged $20 a day, which was below market rate and which Marcus suspected she did partially out of charity disguised as fair exchange. Mrs. Patterson opened her door wearing a floral housecoat and slippers shaped like cats. "Morning, Marcus. Morning, sweet girl." Jordan hugged her around the waist. "Morning, Mrs. Patterson." "Marcus, you look tired." He manufactured a smile. "I'm fine, Mrs. Patterson. Thank you for watching her." "You're a good father. Nicole would be proud." The words landed with unexpected weight. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice, and kissed Jordan on the top of her head. "Be good. Listen to Mrs. Patterson. I'll see you tonight." "Love you, Papa." "Love you bigger than the sky." Bigger than 2 skies. It was their ritual, their catchphrase, the thing they said every time they parted ways. Marcus walked back to the parking lot where his 10-year-old Toyota Camry sat waiting. The car was reliable in the way of old things that had been maintained through necessity and care. New brake pads last month. Oil change every 3,000 miles. A crack in the windshield that spread slowly across the glass like a fault line, but never quite reached critical mass. He drove through empty morning streets toward the highway that would take him north to North Line Systems. The radio played news that didn't concern him. Traffic accidents on I-85, weather predictions for scattered storms later in the week. Then a segment about North Line itself, about the company's CEO Evelyn Pierce facing pressure from activist investor Richard Caldwell. The reporter's voice carried casual authority. Sources indicate Caldwell has acquired an 18% stake in North Line Systems and is pushing for leadership changes. Pierce, who inherited the company from her father 5 years ago, has overseen significant growth but faces questions about long-term sustainability. Marcus switched stations. Rich people fighting over money. Corporate drama that existed in a world he could observe but never touch. His role was to drive executives between meetings, to wait in parking garages, to be present without being noticed. Their problems were abstract to him, numbers on spreadsheets and power plays in boardrooms. They lived in a different universe. He didn't realize yet how wrong he was, how his universe and theirs were about to collide in ways that would destroy his invisibility and force everyone to see him whether they wanted to or not. The drive took 43 minutes. Traffic was lighter than usual, which meant he arrived at North Line headquarters 15 minutes early. The building was a glass tower in Midtown, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces that caught the rising sun and threw light across the surrounding streets. Expensive. Modern. Designed to intimidate. Marcus badged into the underground parking garage and took the service elevator down to the driver's lounge. The space was utilitarian. Lockers, a small kitchen area with a coffee maker that no one cleaned properly, a table with old magazines. 3 other drivers were already there, preparing for their shifts. Patterson, the senior driver who handled CEO transport exclusively, looked up from his phone. "Hayes, you're covering for me tonight at the company gala." Marcus opened his locker and began changing into his uniform. Black slacks, white shirt, black tie, black jacket. The outfit made him feel simultaneously professional and invisible, like a well-dressed piece of furniture. "No problem." Patterson stood and walked over. He was 64, retired Secret Service, and carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had once been responsible for protecting the president. He lowered his voice. "Word of advice, Hayes. In this world, we're furniture. Don't try to be more." Marcus pulled on his jacket and checked his appearance in the small mirror mounted inside his locker door. Everything crisp. Everything correct. "Just here to do my job, sir." "Good man. Keep it that way." Patterson left. The other drivers finished preparing and dispersed to their assigned locations. Marcus grabbed his phone and keys and made his way to the executive garage on sub-level 2. His assigned vehicle was a black Mercedes S-Class, 7 years old but meticulously maintained. He spent the next 20 minutes inspecting it. Tire pressure, fluid levels, interior cleanliness. Everything perfect because everything mattered when you were responsible for transporting people who expected perfection. His shift started at 7:30. For the next 9 hours, he would wait. Most days were like this. Hours of waiting punctuated by brief periods of driving. Executives called when they needed transport. He drove them to meetings, to restaurants, to the airport. During the drives, they took phone calls and ignored him. Sometimes they had conversations that assumed he wasn't there, wasn't listening, wasn't a person capable of understanding or remembering or judging. He had learned things about North Line Systems that way, about financial pressures and personality conflicts and strategic disagreements. He had learned that Richard Caldwell was not just an investor, but a threat. That Evelyn Pierce was fighting for control of the company her father had nearly bankrupted. That the board was divided between loyalty to legacy and attraction to Caldwell's promise of immediate returns. None of it concerned him directly. He was furniture. He was invisible. He was safe in his invisibility. At 8:45, two executives walked past his car engaged in conversation. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, visible through the windshield but unnoticed. The younger executive, a man in his 30s wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase, spoke loudly. "Can't trust these service people. Had one borrow my phone charger last week without asking." The older executive, a woman with steel gray hair and designer glasses, laughed. "You let them in your car? I keep everything locked. You never know." They walked past. Marcus didn't react. His face remained neutral, pleasant, professional. Inside, something old and familiar tightened in his chest. The casual assumptions, the thoughtless prejudice, the way they talked about people like him as if he weren't there, as if he couldn't hear, as if his humanity was conditional upon their acknowledgement. He pulled out his phone and texted Jordan, "How's school?" 3 minutes later, she replied, "Boring. Miss you. Home at 6. Love you bigger than the sky." "Bigger than two skies." Marcus smiled at the screen. This was why he endured the casual cruelty of people who would never see him as fully human. This was why he swallowed his anger and maintained his professional composure and accepted his role as invisible facilitator of other people's important lives. Because Jordan needed health insurance. Because Jordan needed stability. Because Jordan needed a father who showed up every day and kept promises and demonstrated through action what it meant to have integrity, even when the world rewarded its absence. At 3 o'clock, he got a dispatch request. Drive Executive Vice President Harold Chen to a meeting downtown. Marcus brought the car around to the executive entrance and waited. Chen emerged 5 minutes later, phone pressed to his ear, already deep in conversation. He climbed into the back seat without acknowledging Marcus's greeting and continued his call. Marcus drove. Chen talked. "We need to get rid of her. Evelyn's too emotional for this role. Her father would never have let sentiment interfere with business decisions. Caldwell's right. We need experienced leadership." Marcus kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the wheel, his face impassive. Not his business, not his concern. Just words filling the space between point A and point B. But some part of him registered the information, stored it, understood that something significant was building, that the corporate drama he dismissed as irrelevant was about to become relevant in ways he couldn't yet predict. He dropped Chen at the meeting location and returned to the garage. More waiting. He checked his bank balance on his phone. $127 until next paycheck in 5 days. Rent was 2 months behind. If he missed another payment, eviction proceedings would start. Jordan would have to change schools. Mrs. Patterson wouldn't be available to watch her. Everything carefully balanced would collapse. Marcus closed the banking app and opened a photo album. Pictures of Jordan, her first day of kindergarten, her 7th birthday party at the apartment with cake Marcus had baked himself. Last month's school field trip to the aquarium where she stood in front of the shark tank, fearless and delighted. Every photo, a reminder of why the struggle mattered. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, "Marcus Hayes." A woman's voice, young and nervous. "Mr. Hayes, this is Priya from Ms. Pierce's office. Patterson had a family emergency and had to leave. Can you cover the company gala tonight at the Marriott Marquis? 7 o'clock start time, likely won't finish until midnight or later." Marcus calculated quickly. Mrs. Patterson would need to keep Jordan overnight. That would cost extra, but refusing a direct request from the CEO's office was career suicide. "Yes, ma'am, I'll be there." "Thank you. Ms. Pierce has a speech at 8. You'll be on standby for transportation when she's ready to leave." The call ended. Marcus texted Mrs. Patterson to arrange overnight care and received a quick affirmative response. Then he settled back into waiting, unaware that he had just agreed to the assignment that would destroy his careful invisibility and force him into a confrontation with assumptions he had spent a lifetime learning to navigate. The gala started at 7. Marcus arrived at the Marriott Marquis at 6:30, positioned the car in the designated VIP area, and made his way to the service corridor adjacent to the main ballroom. The space buzzed with controlled chaos: caterers moving trays, event staff coordinating logistics, security personnel stationed at key points. Marcus found a position near the service entrance where he could see the stage but remain unobtrusive. The ballroom held 800 people: industry leaders, journalists, investors, board members, everyone dressed in formal attire, everyone performing the elaborate social dance of corporate success. At 8 o'clock, Evelyn Pierce walked onto the stage. Marcus had driven her once before, 6 months ago, a routine transport to the airport. She had been polite, professional, distant. He remembered thinking she looked tired behind the CEO mask, that the weight of inherited responsibility showed in the tightness around her eyes. Tonight, she looked flawless. Navy blue evening gown, hair styled in soft waves, makeup applied with professional precision. She stood at the podium and smiled at the audience with confidence that seemed absolute. But Marcus noticed her hands, the way her fingers gripped the podium edges, the slight tremor she tried to hide, the telltale signs of someone holding themselves together through force of will. He recognized that tremor. Nicole had hands like that during the worst months of treatment, when pain and medication and fear combined into a physical manifestation of invisible struggle. The knowledge created unexpected sympathy. Evelyn Pierce might be CEO, might live in a world Marcus could never access. But in this moment, she was just another human fighting to appear stronger than she felt. Her speech hit the expected notes: growth metrics, strategic vision, gratitude to employees and investors. The audience applauded at appropriate moments. When she finished, she received a standing ovation that looked more obligatory than enthusiastic. Marcus watched as she left the stage and disappeared into a private corridor reserved for VIP guests. The gala continued. Marcus waited. He checked his phone periodically, saw photos from Mrs. Patterson of Jordan eating dinner and doing homework. Everything under control on the home front. Everything proceeding according to plan. At 9:30, Priya found him in the service corridor. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Pierce would like the car ready in 30 minutes. "Yes, ma'am." He went to retrieve the vehicle, positioning it at the VIP entrance with the engine running and the back door accessible. Then he returned to wait for his passenger. Time passed. 9:45 became 10:15, became 10:45. No sign of Evelyn Pierce. At 11, Priya found him again. Her professional composure had cracked, revealing panic underneath. "Mr. Hayes, I need your help, Ms. Pierce is in the executive lounge. She's had too much to drink. She can't walk properly. Patterson already left for his family emergency, and we can't let anyone see her like this. The press is still circulating in the lobby." Marcus understood what was really being asked. Not just drive the CEO home. Remove the problem. Make the situation disappear. Be useful, and then be forgotten. It wasn't the first time. Service workers were called upon to handle the messy realities that important people needed hidden. He followed Priya through back corridors to a private lounge on the hotel's executive level. Inside, Evelyn Pierce sat alone on a velvet sofa, her carefully styled appearance disheveled. Her shoes lay discarded on the floor. Her hair had started to fall loose from its pins. She looked up when they entered, and Marcus saw the fear beneath the intoxication. The vulnerability of someone who had lost control and knew it. Something shifted in his chest. Not quite sympathy, not quite responsibility, but something that recognized human need stripped of title and position. He thought of Nicole alone in the hospital hallway. He thought of Jordan asking what to do when you see someone hurting. He thought of the lesson he had taught her 100 times. The lesson that was about to cost him everything. Priya's voice pulled him back. "Can you help get her to the car without anyone seeing?" Marcus met Evelyn's unfocused eyes. Yes, ma'am. He removed his uniform jacket and draped it around Evelyn's shoulders, partly for warmth and partly to obscure her face. Priya checked the hallway, signaled when it was clear. Marcus supported Evelyn's weight as they walked, keeping her upright, keeping her moving. They took the service elevator to avoid the main lobby, emerged in a staff corridor, and made their way to where the car waited. He helped Evelyn into the back seat. She immediately curled against the window, her breathing heavy and uneven. Marcus closed the door and turned to Priya. Address? She gave him the information for Evelyn's penthouse in Buckhead, then hesitated. Mr. Hayes, thank you. And please, this stays between us. Marcus nodded. Of course it would stay between them. Service workers learned early to forget what they saw, to maintain discretion, to understand that their job security depended on silence about the private failures of important people. He got behind the wheel and began the drive. Rain had started falling, heavy sheets that blurred the city lights into watercolor impressions. Marcus drove carefully, hyper-aware of his passenger and the weight of responsibility she represented. One wrong move, one accident, one moment of impaired judgment, and the consequences would be devastating. Halfway to Buckhead, Evelyn spoke for the first time. Her voice was slurred but quiet, almost plaintive. Do you know what it's like? To have an entire room waiting for you to fail? Searching for cracks? Marcus met her eyes briefly in the rearview mirror. He didn't answer, but something in his expression must have communicated understanding, because Evelyn nodded slowly and closed her eyes again. The rain intensified. Thunder rolled across the city. Marcus navigated familiar streets made unfamiliar by weather and darkness, and the surreal quality of this entire situation. He was crossing boundaries he wasn't supposed to cross, entering spaces he wasn't supposed to occupy, becoming visible in ways that violated the fundamental rule of his profession. Patterson's voice echoed in his memory. In this world, we're furniture. Don't try to be more. But Marcus was already more. The moment he agreed to help, the moment he put his jacket around Evelyn's shoulders, the moment he made her well-being his responsibility, he had violated the unspoken contract that kept him safe in his invisibility. They arrived at Evelyn's building at 11:47. Marcus knew the time exactly because he checked it as he pulled into the underground garage. Evelyn had fallen fully asleep, her breathing deep and even. Marcus parked and sat for a moment, considering his options. He could call Priya and wait for someone else to handle this. He could wake Evelyn and help her to the elevator, then leave her to find her own way to her apartment. Both options felt wrong. Both felt like abandonment disguised as propriety. He got out and opened her door. She stirred, but didn't fully wake. Marcus hesitated, then carefully lifted her from the back seat, supporting her weight against his chest. She was lighter than he expected, her body slack with sleep and intoxication and exhaustion. The building security guard watched from behind his desk as Marcus carried Evelyn through the lobby to the elevator. The man's expression was carefully neutral, but Marcus could read what lay beneath it. Suspicion. Assumption. The same look he had received 1,000 times before from people who saw a black man in proximity to a white woman and filled in the narrative with their own prejudices. Marcus kept his face impassive. He pressed the button for the penthouse floor. The elevator doors closed, sealing them in mechanical silence that felt suffocating. The ride up seemed endless, each floor marked by a soft chime that counted the distance between the lobby and whatever happened next. Inside the penthouse, Marcus found the bedroom and laid Evelyn gently on the bed. He removed her shoes, but nothing else. He filled a glass of water from the bathroom sink and placed it on the nightstand along with 2 aspirin from a bottle in the medicine cabinet. As he turned to leave, her hand caught his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone half asleep. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. Words tumbled out in fragments. Don't leave. Everyone leaves. He promised to stay. Promised to help. Then he left when I needed him most. Marcus didn't know what she was talking about, didn't know who he was, what promise had been broken, what wound was speaking through the fog of alcohol and medication. But he understood the shape of it. He understood abandonment. He gently freed his wrist. "You're safe now. Rest." Evelyn's eyes closed. Within moments, her breathing deepened back into sleep. Marcus walked to the living room and looked around. Expensive furniture, original artwork on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Atlanta's skyline. Everything perfect, everything curated, everything designed to project success and control. He should leave. Every rational instinct told him to walk out that door, take the elevator down, drive the company car back to the garage, and forget this night had ever happened. But something held him there. The image of Evelyn's trembling hands on the podium, the raw pain in her voice when she spoke of being left, the lesson he had taught Jordan that now demanded he live it. Marcus found a blanket in a hall closet and settled onto the leather sofa. He would stay until morning, just to make sure she was safe. Then he would slip out before she woke and never speak of this again. No one needed to know. No one would care. He was furniture, invisible, already forgotten. He pulled out his phone and texted Mrs. Patterson. "Everything okay?" She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a photo of Jordan asleep on the couch, surrounded by stuffed animals arranged in their important order. Marcus smiled despite everything, saved the photo, and set his phone alarm for 5:45, early enough to leave before Evelyn woke, early enough to maintain the fiction that none of this had happened. He stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled him under. His sleep was fitful, broken by unfamiliar sounds and the nagging sense that he had made a choice whose consequences he couldn't yet measure. At some point during the night, rain stopped. At some point, the city's ambient noise shifted from late-night traffic to early morning delivery trucks. At some point, morning arrived whether he was ready for it or not. Marcus woke disoriented, his neck stiff, his back aching. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he heard movement in the kitchen, and everything came flooding back. He checked his phone. 6:30. His alarm hadn't gone off, or he had slept through it. Either way, he was still here when he shouldn't be. He sat up. Evelyn emerged from the hallway wearing yoga pants and a sweater, and over that, his white Oxford shirt, the one he had left draped over a chair when he removed his jacket. She must have found it and put it on without thinking. Or perhaps she thought it was hers. The sight sent a jolt through him that he couldn't quite name. She held a cup of coffee. Her face was pale, scrubbed clean of last night's makeup. Her hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail. She looked nothing like the polished CEO from the gala. She looked vulnerable and uncertain and afraid. She looked at Marcus for a long moment. Her expression shifted through several emotions he couldn't read. Then she spoke, her voice flat, almost clinical. "Did you do anything to me last night?" The words landed like physical blows, not because they surprised him, but because they confirmed something he had always known, that no matter how hard he worked, how professional he remained, how carefully he navigated the invisible rules of his station, he would always be seen first through the lens of others' fears. He understood why she was asking. He understood the vulnerability of waking in your own home wearing a stranger's shirt with no memory of how you got there. He understood all of it, but understanding didn't make it hurt any less. Before he could respond, he noticed the laptop open on the dining table. The screen showed a video conference interface with 7 faces arranged in a grid. The company's board of directors, Evelyn's leadership team. They had been meeting remotely, probably some early morning emergency session, and Evelyn had joined from her laptop without realizing the camera was pointed at the living room, without realizing Marcus was visible on her sofa, without realizing what this would look like to people already looking for reasons to question her judgment. The faces on the screen showed shock, confusion, poorly concealed judgment. One of them, Richard Caldwell, wore an expression Marcus would later describe as triumphant. Whatever was about to happen next, Marcus knew with sudden certainty it would not end well for him. Marcus rose from the sofa slowly, keeping every movement deliberate and measured. He met Evelyn's eyes without flinching, without aggression, without the defensiveness that innocent men sometimes displayed when accused. His voice came out steady, carrying the weight of truth that needed no embellishment. "Ma'am, nothing happened. I drove you home after the gala. You couldn't walk on your own. I helped you inside and stayed to make sure you were safe." He pointed to the bedroom visible through the doorway. "Water and aspirin on your nightstand. I put them there around midnight. The blanket on this sofa is folded because I used it. My jacket is still on that chair. I slept here and nothing more." Evelyn listened without expression. The board members on the laptop screen listened too. Their silence heavy with implications Marcus could feel accumulating like storm clouds. When he finished, he didn't wait for a response. He picked up his jacket, nodded once to Evelyn with a respect that cost him something to give, and walked toward the door. Vincent Shaw's voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Hayes, we've already contacted authorities. You should remain available for questioning." Marcus stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "I'll cooperate fully. The building security footage will show everything." He left. The hallway was empty. The elevator arrived within seconds. Marcus stepped inside and watched the numbers descend. Penthouse to lobby. 63 floors of distance between Evelyn Pierce's world and his own. The security guard at the desk watched him exit with undisguised suspicion. Marcus nodded politely and walked to where the company car sat in the underground garage. He drove back to Northline headquarters through morning traffic that was beginning to build. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, reflecting brake lights in red streaks across black asphalt. His hands remained steady on the wheel, but his mind raced ahead to the phone call he would need to make, the explanation he would need to give, the reassurance Jordan would need when she asked why he looked worried. The garage at Northline was nearly empty at 7:15 on a Sunday morning. Marcus parked the Mercedes in its designated spot, inspected it for damage or debris, and made his way to the driver's lounge. Patterson was there, already back from whatever family emergency had pulled him away. He looked up from his phone with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. Patterson's voice was careful. "Hayes, how did transport go last night? Got Ms. Pierce home safely? Any issues?" Marcus met the older man's eyes and understood the question beneath the question. Patterson had worked in security long enough to recognize when situations developed complications. "She was intoxicated. I helped her inside and stayed to make sure she was okay. Left this morning without incident." Patterson studied him for a long moment. "You stayed?" "On the couch. She couldn't walk on her own. Seemed like the right thing to do." Something shifted in Patterson's expression. Not quite approval, but understanding. The right thing and the safe thing aren't always the same, Hayes. You know that. Marcus changed out of his uniform and back into civilian clothes. Jeans, a t-shirt, sneakers worn thin at the heels. He gathered his belongings from his locker and prepared to leave. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patterson asking when he would pick up Jordan. He replied that he was on his way and felt a small measure of relief that at least one part of his morning would proceed normally. The drive to Mrs. Patterson's took 20 minutes. Jordan met him at the door with enthusiastic energy that made his chest tighten with love and worry in equal measure. "Papa, you're back. We had pancakes and Mrs. Patterson let me help flip them, and one went on the floor, but we gave it to the dog next door." Marcus scooped her into a hug that lasted longer than usual. "Sounds like you had an adventure." Mrs. Patterson appeared behind Jordan with a knowing look. "Everything okay, Marcus?" Just a long night at work. Thank you for keeping her. You look exhausted. Go home. Rest. Jordan was perfect as always. They drove back to the apartment. Jordan talked non-stop about the dog next door and the pancake adventure and a book she was reading about space exploration. Marcus made appropriate sounds of interest while his mind kept returning to that laptop screen, those faces watching, the assumption forming in real time that would be impossible to fully dispel no matter what evidence eventually emerged. At home, Jordan settled in front of the television with cartoons while Marcus made coffee and tried to convince himself that everything would be fine. The security footage would show the truth. Priya would confirm his account. Detective Chen, if she investigated, would find nothing because there was nothing to find. Truth would prevail because truth always prevailed in the end. Except he knew better. He had lived 38 years learning that truth was often insufficient against assumption, that evidence could be interpreted through the lens of prejudice, that innocence was a privilege afforded more readily to some people than others. His phone rang at 8:30. Unknown number. Marcus answered with growing dread. "This is Marcus Hayes." A woman's voice, professional and impersonal. "Mr. Hayes, this is Denise Williams from Northline Systems Human Resources. You're being placed on paid administrative leave pending completion of an internal investigation. Do not report to work tomorrow. Someone will contact you with further instructions." Investigation of what? "I'm not at liberty to discuss details. You'll be contacted soon." The call ended. Marcus stared at his phone and felt the careful architecture of his life begin to crack. Paid leave was better than suspension without pay, but it was still exile. It was still assumption of guilt requiring investigation to disprove. It was still his name attached to something that would follow him regardless of outcome. Jordan appeared in the doorway. "Papa, who was that?" "Just work, baby. Nothing important." She studied him with the perceptiveness children develop when they learn early that adults don't always tell the whole truth. "You look sad." Marcus manufactured a smile. "Just tired. Come here." She climbed onto his lap and he held her, breathing in the smell of Mrs. Patterson's lavender soap and children's shampoo and innocence that wouldn't last forever. He thought about all the conversations he would need to have, all the explanations he would need to give, all the ways this situation would ripple outward and touch everything he had worked to protect. The photograph of Nicole on the dresser seemed to watch him with sad understanding. She had warned him once, during the worst of her illness, that the world would try to break him after she was gone, that he would need to be stronger than he thought possible, that loving Jordan and keeping her safe would require sacrifices he couldn't yet imagine. Marcus hadn't fully understood then. He was beginning to understand now. Monday morning arrived with news. Marcus wished he could unsee. He was checking his phone over coffee when the first text came through from another driver at Northline. Just a screenshot without comment. The image showed a photograph taken from distance, grainy but unmistakable. Marcus carrying Evelyn Pierce in his arms outside the hotel, her body limp against his chest. His face turned toward the camera in a way that made it impossible to deny his identity. The caption beneath read, "Northline driver under investigation for incident with CEO." Marcus's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. His hands didn't shake. His breathing remained steady. But something cold and familiar settled in his stomach. Recognition of a pattern he had hoped to avoid, but had always known, was waiting. The photograph told a story without context. The story would spread faster than any explanation could travel. The damage was already done. His phone buzzed again. Another text, another screenshot. The same photo now appearing on an industry gossip blog called Tech Buzz. The article was short, speculative, heavy with implication. Sources indicate Northline Systems is investigating an incident involving executive driver Marcus Hayes and CEO Evelyn Pierce following the company's anniversary gala Saturday night. Details remain unclear, but photographs show Hayes carrying an apparently intoxicated Pierce into her apartment building. Northline declined to comment. Hayes could not be reached. Marcus set down his coffee and walked to Jordan's room. She was still asleep, sprawled across her bed with stuffed animals arranged around her like protective totems. He watched her breathe and felt the weight of what was coming settle across his shoulders like physical burden. She would hear things at school. Other children would say things their parents said. She would ask questions he didn't want to answer. He returned to the kitchen and opened his laptop. The photo had already spread beyond tech buzz. 3 other industry blogs had picked it up. The company's internal messaging system showed dozens of conversations mentioning his name. Marcus didn't have access to those conversations anymore, but he could imagine their content. Speculation, judgment, the eager consumption of scandal that made workplace gossip more compelling than actual work. His phone rang. Detective Sarah Chen. Marcus answered. "This is Marcus Hayes." "Mr. Hayes, I'm Detective Sarah Chen with Atlanta Police. I need to ask you some questions about Saturday night. Can I come by your residence this afternoon?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll cooperate fully." 2 o'clock work for you?" "Yes, ma'am." The call ended. Marcus looked at the time. 6 hours until the detective arrived. 6 hours to prepare Jordan for questions she shouldn't have to face. 6 hours to convince himself that truth would be sufficient defense against the narrative already forming in the collective imagination of everyone who had seen that photograph. He woke Jordan gently and helped her through the morning routine. Breakfast, getting dressed, brushing teeth, and combing hair into the 2 puffs she preferred. She seemed to sense something wrong but didn't press him with questions. They drove to school in relative silence, broken only by Jordan's occasional observations about clouds or traffic or upcoming assignments. At drop-off, Marcus walked her to the entrance instead of letting her out at the curb. Other parents were doing the same, clustering in small groups that fell silent when Marcus approached. He felt their eyes tracking him, felt the weight of their judgment or curiosity or whatever emotion drove them to stare at a man they had seen dozens of times before, but were now viewing through the lens of scandal. One mother, a woman Marcus had exchanged pleasant greetings with for 2 years, pulled her daughter closer as he passed. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus kept walking. Jordan's hand in his remained steady, trusting, unaware of the social currents shifting around them. At the classroom door, Jordan turned to hug him. "Love you, Papa." "Love you bigger than the sky, baby girl." "Bigger than 2 skies." She disappeared inside. Marcus walked back through the gauntlet of staring parents and returned to his car. His phone showed 3 new messages. He ignored them. Whatever people wanted could wait. Whatever people thought they knew could wait. The detective would arrive at 2 o'clock and he would tell the truth, and the truth would have to be enough, because it was all he had. At home, Marcus spent the morning cleaning the apartment, even though it was already clean. Physical work to occupy his hands while his mind circled around the upcoming conversation. What questions would Chen ask? What details would matter? How much of Saturday night's context could be communicated through words when so much of it existed in the realm of instinct and moral choice that didn't translate well to official statements? Detective Chen arrived at 2 o'clock exactly. She was in her mid-40s, Korean-American, wearing a gray pantsuit and carrying a leather messenger bag. Her expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes were sharp, assessing, missing nothing. Marcus invited her inside and gestured toward the small living room. Chen sat on the edge of the couch and pulled out a notebook. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for meeting with me. I want to be clear up front that you're not under arrest and you're free to end this conversation at any time. However, anything you say can be used in an investigation. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Tell me what happened Saturday night." Marcus told her everything. The call from Priya requesting transport coverage. Observing Evelyn's speech and noticing signs of intoxication. Being asked to help get her to the car when she couldn't walk. the drive to her penthouse, carrying her inside because she had fallen asleep, staying on the couch to make sure she was safe, leaving in the morning after the awkward confrontation. Chen took notes without interrupting. When he finished, she looked up. "Why did you stay?" The question landed like it had weight beyond procedural necessity. Marcus took a moment to consider his answer, to reach for words that would convey truth without sounding rehearsed or defensive. 6 years ago, my wife Nicole was dying of cancer. One night I got a call from the hospital. She had tried to get to the bathroom by herself, fallen, and couldn't get up. The nurses were dealing with an emergency in another room. She laid on that floor for 20 minutes before someone found her. Chen's pen stopped moving. She met his eyes and something shifted in her expression. Marcus continued. When I finally got there, Nicole wasn't crying from pain. She was crying from shame, from feeling helpless and alone and afraid. I swore after that night I would never let anyone feel that way again if I had the power to help. So when I saw Ms. Pierce unable to walk, unable to take care of herself, I stayed. Not because of who she is, because of who I am. The silence that followed felt different from the silence of judgment. Chen studied him for a long moment before returning to her notes. The building security footage would corroborate your account, but there's a problem. Marcus felt dread crystallize into certainty. What problem? The footage from 11:45 Saturday night until 7 Sunday morning was deleted. Someone accessed the system remotely at 3:42 Sunday morning using administrator credentials. I didn't delete anything. I believe you. But without that footage, we have a significant evidentiary gap. Marcus leaned forward, anger finally breaking through his carefully maintained composure. Someone deleted the only evidence that proves I did nothing wrong. You understand what that means? Someone set this up. Chen's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried a note of sympathy. Can you think of anyone who would want to damage you? Or Ms. Pierce? Marcus thought about the conversations he had overheard. Executive disagreements. Richard Caldwell pushing to remove Evelyn. Board members questioning her judgment. The elaborate corporate warfare that existed above his pay grade, but that he had observed from his invisible position behind the wheel. There's an investor, Richard Caldwell. He's trying to force Ms. Pierce out. I heard executives talking about it. How does destroying your reputation help Caldwell? It doesn't. But destroying Ms. Pierce's judgment does. And if you want to make a CEO look incompetent, you create a scandal involving her employee, especially one that plays on racial biases. Chen wrote something in her notebook. Her face gave away nothing. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Hayes. It's the truth. Truth and proof aren't always the same thing. Marcus sat back, feeling the weight of her words settle over him. Truth without proof was just opinion. Opinion without evidence was just noise. He was drowning in the space between what he knew and what he could prove, between innocence and the appearance of guilt that would follow him regardless of outcome. Chen closed her notebook. I'll keep investigating. Meanwhile, I need you to stay available. Don't leave town. Don't contact Ms. Pierce. Let me handle this. What should I tell my daughter when kids at school ask her why her father is on the news? Chen's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something human underneath. Tell her the truth, that sometimes people believe things that aren't true, that evidence matters more than assumptions, that you didn't do anything wrong. Will that be enough? I don't know, Mr. Hayes. I hope so. She left. Marcus sat alone in the living room and stared at the wall. The apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in with the weight of circumstances beyond his control. His phone buzzed continuously with messages he didn't want to read, text from other drivers offering sympathy that felt more like curiosity. Calls from numbers he didn't recognize, likely journalists fishing for comment. Silence from anyone in authority who could actually help. At 3:30, Marcus drove to Jordan's school for pickup. The cluster of parents near the entrance fell silent as he approached. Their stares felt heavier than this morning, more overtly hostile. Marcus kept his eyes forward and waited for Jordan to emerge. She came out with her backpack dragging on the ground and her face showing distress that made Marcus's chest constrict. She walked to him without running, without the usual enthusiasm that defined her exits from school. When she reached him, she didn't speak, just took his hand and held it tight enough to hurt. They walked to the car in silence. Marcus opened her door and helped her with the seatbelt, even though she was old enough to do it herself. He got behind the wheel and started the engine, but didn't drive yet. He turned to look at his daughter and saw tears streaming down her face. His voice came out gentle, despite the anger building in his chest. "Baby girl, what happened?" Jordan's words tumbled out between sobs. "Emma brought her mom's tablet to lunch. She showed everyone a video. It was you, Papa, carrying a lady. And the kids were saying things, bad things, about you, about what you did." Marcus reached back and took her hand. "Jordan, look at me." She turned, her face wet and blotchy and breaking his heart. "I didn't do anything bad. I helped someone who needed help." That video doesn't show the whole story. "But everyone's talking about it. They're saying you're going to jail." "I'm not going to jail, I promise you that." "How do you know?" The question was fair. Marcus struggled to find an answer that would reassure her without lying. "Because I told the truth to the detective. Because there are cameras that saw what really happened. Because the right thing will come out eventually." Jordan wiped her nose with her sleeve. "When?" "I don't know, baby. But we have to be patient. Can you be patient for me?" She nodded, but didn't look convinced. Marcus drove home with his daughter silent in the back seat, withdrawn into a space of fear and confusion that 9-year-olds shouldn't have to occupy. At home, she went straight to her room without being asked. Marcus heard the door close softly and wanted to follow her, to fix this, to make the world make sense again through force of will and paternal authority. But he couldn't. The damage was already done. Jordan's innocence about her father's invulnerability had been shattered. She had learned today that the world could turn against people she loved, that reputation could be destroyed by photographs without context, that sometimes doing the right thing led to consequences that felt like punishment. Marcus made dinner mechanically. Grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup from a can. Comfort food that wouldn't comfort. He called Jordan to the table, and she came reluctantly, sat down, picked at her food without eating. Finally, she looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Papa, are you going to prison?" The question hit him like physical impact. He set down his spoon and reached across the table to take both her hands in his. "No, baby, I'm not going to prison. But everyone says you did something bad. Everyone's wrong, and I'm going to prove it." "How?" "By showing evidence, by telling the truth, by not giving up even when it's hard." Jordan's voice came out small and frightened. "What if they don't believe you?" Marcus struggled to answer honestly without terrifying her. "Then we keep fighting. Together. You and me. Like we always have." She pulled her hands away and stared at her soup. "I hate this." "I know, baby. I hate it too." They finished dinner in silence. Marcus cleaned the dishes while Jordan retreated to her room again. He gave her space to process, to feel what she needed to feel, to be angry at a world that had intruded on her childhood with adult cruelty. Later, he knocked on her door and found her lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Marcus sat on the edge of her mattress. "Can I tell you something?" Jordan nodded without looking at him. When your mama was sick, there were days when I was so scared and angry I didn't think I could keep going. Days when the unfairness of it all felt like too much to carry. But you know what got me through? What? You. Knowing that you needed me to be strong. Knowing that I had to show you how to face hard things. Knowing that the most important job I would ever have was teaching you that difficult doesn't mean impossible. Jordan finally turned to look at him. Is this like when Mama was sick? The comparison landed hard. Marcus chose his words carefully. It's different, but it's teaching us the same lesson. That sometimes life is unfair, that sometimes people believe things that aren't true, but we don't give up. We don't stop fighting. We don't let other people's assumptions define who we are. Jordan sat up and threw her arms around his neck. Marcus held her while she cried against his shoulder, small body shaking with emotion she was too young to fully process. He stroked her hair and made soothing sounds and hated every person who had contributed to his daughter's pain through their thoughtless consumption of scandal. Eventually, her sobs quieted. She pulled back and wiped her face. Papa, I'm scared. Me too, baby girl. But we're going to be okay. Promise? Marcus met her eyes and made a promise he hoped desperately he could keep. Promise. He stayed with her until she fell asleep, exhausted from crying. Then he returned to the living room and opened his laptop to face the spreading wildfire of his destroyed reputation. The photograph had been picked up by mainstream media now, Atlanta news stations running segments about allegations and investigations with his name attached. Social media posts multiplying exponentially, strangers offering opinions about his character based on a single decontextualized image. The comment sections were predictable. Some people defended him, pointing out the lack of actual evidence. But most piled on with assumptions that revealed their underlying biases, speculation about his intentions, warnings about men like him, demands for his immediate termination and arrest. The mob had formed and was demanding blood without knowing or caring what had actually happened. Marcus closed the laptop and sat in darkness. The apartment building's familiar sounds surrounded him. Footsteps from the unit above. Television noise bleeding through thin walls. Distant sirens wailing through Atlanta's night. Life continuing normally for everyone except him, everyone except Jordan, everyone except the people whose worlds had been upended by a photograph taken without permission and distributed without context. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer, expecting another journalist or another concerned acquaintance whose concern felt more like intrusive curiosity. But the caller ID showed Priya's number. Marcus answered. This is Marcus. Priya's voice was tense. Mr. Hayes, I wanted to call and apologize. This situation has gotten completely out of control. I've given a statement to HR confirming that I asked you to help Ms. Pierce, that you acted professionally, that there was nothing inappropriate. Thank you. I should have said something publicly sooner, before it spread like this. It wouldn't have mattered. People see what they want to see. Priya was quiet for a moment. Miss Pierce wants to speak with you. She's trying to fix this. Marcus felt anger flare hot and immediate. She wants to speak to me now, after letting this explode? After her board saw me on her couch and nobody thought to clarify the situation immediately? She was scared, Mr. Hayes. She woke up not remembering anything, and her first instinct was fear. She regrets that now. Fear, I understand. What I don't understand is silence while my life gets destroyed. She's not being silent anymore. She's fighting this. She's demanding the security footage be recovered. She's pushing back against Caldwell. She's trying to make it right. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to decide whether Evelyn Pierce's belated advocacy mattered when the damage was already done. Tell her I appreciate that. Tell her I'll cooperate with whatever investigation needs to happen, but tell her I can't work there anymore. Not after this. Don't make that decision yet. Wait until I've already made it. Even if I'm completely exonerated, Even if every piece of evidence proves I did nothing wrong, I'll always be the driver who was accused. People will always wonder, and I can't subject my daughter to that." Priya sighed. "I understand. I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes, for all of it." The call ended. Marcus sat holding his phone and feeling the full weight of what he was giving up. $78,000 a year, health insurance that covered Jordan's medical needs, stability that had taken him 3 years to build. All of it gone because he made the choice to help someone in need, because he lived the values he tried to teach his daughter, because doing the right thing had collided with a world that rewarded self-preservation over compassion. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had stayed invisible for 3 years by never making waves, never drawing attention, never being more than furniture in other people's important lives. One night of visibility had destroyed everything invisibility had protected. Tuesday brought video, 45 seconds that had been edited to remove context and amplify implication. Someone had cobbled together footage from multiple security cameras at the hotel. Marcus reaching into the car. Marcus carrying Evelyn with her body limp against his chest. Marcus looking directly at a camera he hadn't known was there. The clips were set to ominous music and uploaded to YouTube with a title designed for maximum viral spread. Driver takes advantage of intoxicated CEO. Within 6 hours, the video had been viewed 89,000 times. By Tuesday evening, the number had crossed 200,000. Comments poured in faster than anyone could moderate them. The mob had found new fuel for their outrage. The story had evolved from photograph to video, from still image to moving narrative that seemed to confirm every assumption already made. Marcus learned about the video when his phone started buzzing uncontrollably around noon. Text after text from numbers he recognized and numbers he didn't. Everyone wanted to alert him to the thing destroying his reputation in real time. Everyone wanted to offer sympathy or advice or judgment disguised as concern. He watched the video once, felt nausea rise in his throat, and put his phone face down on the kitchen counter. Jordan was at school. Mrs. Patterson had offered to pick her up and keep her for the afternoon to give Marcus space. He had accepted gratefully, knowing he needed time to process this new development before facing his daughter's questions. Now he sat alone in the apartment and watched his life collapse through a screen that displayed numbers climbing with algorithmic precision. The doorbell rang at 2:30. Marcus wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door to find a reporter standing there with a cameraman behind her. The woman thrust a microphone toward him. "Mr. Hayes, do you have any comment on the video that's been circulating online?" Marcus stepped back. "No comment." "Do you deny the allegations?" "I'm not discussing this. Please leave." "The public has a right to know." Marcus closed the door in her face and locked it. Through the peephole, he watched them linger for a moment before retreating down the hallway. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding his system in response to the ambush. He walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot. A news van was parked near his car. Someone with a camera was filming the building. His phone rang. "Detective Chen." Marcus answered. "Detective?" "Mr. Hayes, I'm sure you've seen the video by now." "Yes." "I want you to know we're investigating its origin. Someone deliberately edited security footage and leaked it to create maximum damage. That's a crime." "Who?" "We're working on it. In the meantime, I need to warn you that this has escalated beyond a simple investigation. There's significant public pressure. My superiors are getting calls. The media is demanding statements. This is becoming difficult to manage." Marcus felt ice in his veins. "Are you charging me with something?" "No. Not yet. Not unless evidence emerges that contradicts your account. But I need you to understand the position we're in. Public perception matters even when it shouldn't." "So truth doesn't matter as much as appearances?" Chen's voice carried genuine regret. "I didn't say that. But I'm being honest about the reality of the situation. High-profile cases attract scrutiny that complicates everything. What should I do? Stay out of sight. Don't talk to media. Let me work this. And Mr. Hayes, you might want to consider hiring a lawyer. The call ended. Marcus stared at his phone and felt the trap closing around him. He couldn't afford a lawyer. His savings had been depleted by Jordan's medical expenses and catching up on late rent. The idea of mounting a legal defense when he had done nothing wrong felt like cosmic injustice compounded by practical impossibility. He called Mrs. Patterson to check on Jordan and learned that his daughter had refused lunch and was hiding in the spare bedroom. Mrs. Patterson's voice was gentle but worried. Marcus, she saw the video. Some child at school had it on their phone at recess. Jordan got into a fight. Marcus's chest tightened. What kind of fight? Physical. She pushed another girl who said something cruel about you. The principal suspended her for the rest of the week. Is she hurt? Bruised ego more than anything else. But Marcus, she's not okay. She needs you. I'm coming to get her. Marcus drove to Mrs. Patterson's apartment with his heart in his throat. Jordan met him at the door with her face swollen from crying and her knuckles scraped. She looked at him with such profound hurt that Marcus wanted to burn down the world that had caused it. He knelt and opened his arms. She ran into them and held on like he was the only solid thing in her crumbling universe. Papa, they showed me the video. The girl said you hurt someone, said you're a bad person. I pushed her. Jordan, you can't hit people. But she lied. You told me to stand up for the truth. Marcus pulled back to look at her face. Yes, but not with fists, not with violence. That's not who we are. Then how? How do I stand up when everyone's lying? The question broke him. He had no good answer, no guidance that would satisfy a 9-year-old's desperate need for justice in an unjust situation. He thought of all the lessons he had taught her about helping others, about standing up for what's right, about not turning away from people in need. Now those lessons were costing her the very thing they were supposed to protect. Her sense that the world made sense, her belief that goodness was rewarded, her faith that her father could fix anything. Marcus carried Jordan to the car, even though she was too heavy for him to carry comfortably. He buckled her into the back seat and drove home while she cried herself into exhausted sleep. At the apartment, he transferred her to bed and sat beside her, watching her breathe and wondering how many more times she would have to cry over this before it ended. His phone vibrated with a new message. This one from a lawyer named Maria Rodriguez who did pro bono work for low-income families. She had heard about his case through Detective Chen and was offering her services. Marcus called her back immediately. Maria's voice was professional but kind. Mr. Hayes, I've reviewed what's publicly available about your situation. I want to help if you'll let me. I can't afford a lawyer. I'm not asking you to pay. This case has all the hallmarks of systemic bias meeting corporate manipulation. That's exactly the kind of case I take. Marcus felt something in his chest unclench slightly. What do we do? First, we stop talking to anyone except each other and Detective Chen. Second, we prepare for the possibility that this gets worse before it gets better. Third, we build your defense assuming you'll need it even though you shouldn't. How much worse can it get? Maria was quiet for a moment. Mr. Hayes, I'm going to be honest with you. Your case is difficult. Black man, white woman, power dynamic, alcohol involved. Even with proof of innocence, juries are biased. Public opinion is biased. The system is biased. I can fight for you, but I can't promise outcomes. So I should take a settlement, admit I did something wrong to make this go away? I'm not saying that. I'm saying think about your daughter. Think about what a trial would do to her. Think about whether vindication is worth the cost of getting there. Marcus looked at Jordan sleeping and felt the weight of impossible choices. What would you do if she were your daughter? I'd fight. But that's me. You have to decide for yourself what's worth protecting and what's worth sacrificing. They talked for another 20 minutes, discussing strategy and timelines and legal procedures that Marcus only half understood. When the call ended, he sat in the darkening apartment and tried to make sense of everything. Detective Chen investigating the deleted footage. Maria building a defense he hoped he wouldn't need. Evelyn Pierce allegedly pushing back against whatever forces had orchestrated this disaster. All these people working on his behalf while he sat powerless and watched his reputation burn. Jordan woke around 7. Marcus made her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese from a box with cut-up hot dogs mixed in. She picked at it without appetite. They sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, the silence heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Jordan set down her fork. "Papa, what's going to happen?" Marcus chose honesty over reassurance. "I don't know, baby. The detective is trying to find proof that I didn't do anything wrong. A lawyer is helping us prepare in case things get more complicated. Ms. Pierce is trying to fix the situation from her end. A lot of people are working to make this right. But what if they can't? Then we deal with whatever comes. Together. Will we have to move?" The question revealed how much she had been thinking about practical consequences. Marcus realized she was old enough to understand that money mattered, that losing his job meant losing their home, that everything could change. "Maybe. I don't know yet. But wherever we go together." Jordan's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to leave. I finally have friends. You said we'd stay here until I graduated." "I know, baby. I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix this." "You keep saying that, but it's not getting fixed. It's getting worse." Marcus had no response. She was right. Despite everyone's efforts, despite truth being on his side, despite his complete innocence of any wrongdoing, the situation was deteriorating. The mob had decided his guilt. The video had provided ammunition for their assumptions. His daughter was suspended from school for defending him. His job was gone. His savings were depleted. His future had become uncertain. He thought about Nicole and the promise he had made at her deathbed. Be their light. Be the person Jordan could look to when the world seemed dark and cruel and senseless. Be strong enough to carry them both through whatever came. Marcus didn't feel strong. He felt exhausted and angry and afraid. But he looked at Jordan's tear-stained face and found something that resembled resolve. "You're right, it's not fixed yet. But that doesn't mean we stop fighting. That doesn't mean we give up. That doesn't mean we let other people's lies become our truth." Jordan wiped her nose. "How do we fight?" "By living like we've always lived. By helping when we see people hurting. By standing up for truth even when it costs something. By showing everyone who you are rather than what they assume you are." "What if that's not enough?" "Then at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll know we didn't become the people they think we are." Jordan nodded slowly, processing this through the lens of her 9-year-old understanding of morality and consequence. Marcus cleared the dishes and helped her with the homework she had missed, math problems and reading assignments that felt absurdly normal given the chaos surrounding them. They worked side by side at the kitchen table until Jordan's eyes grew heavy. He tucked her into bed and read her a chapter from the space exploration book she loved. When he finished, Jordan looked up at him with serious eyes. "Papa, do you regret helping that lady?" The question went straight to the heart of everything. Marcus considered lying, considered saying yes to validate his daughter's pain and anger, but he had never lied to her about things that mattered. "No, baby. I don't regret it." "Why not? Look what it did to us." "Because if I regret helping someone in need, then everything I've taught you about compassion means nothing. Because the cost of doing the right thing doesn't change whether it was right. Because I need you to learn that your character matters more than other people's opinions." Jordan was quiet for a long time. Then, "I still hate this." Me too, baby girl. Me too. He kissed her forehead and turned off the light. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and let himself feel the full weight of exhaustion. Physical tiredness from stress and lack of sleep. Emotional depletion from maintaining composure for Jordan's sake while screaming internally at the unfairness of everything. Spiritual weariness from fighting a battle that seemed designed to be unwinnable. His phone buzzed with a message from Detective Chen. "Found something. We'll update you tomorrow." Marcus stared at the words and tried to decide whether hope was still a reasonable response. Detective Chen arrived at Marcus's apartment Wednesday morning with a manila folder and an expression that suggested cautious optimism. Marcus invited her inside and made coffee while Jordan watched cartoons in her bedroom with the door cracked open. Chen settled at the kitchen table and spread documents across its surface like evidence at trial. Her voice was measured. "We traced the deletion of the building security footage. The command came from a VPN registered to a shell company called Caldwell Ventures LLC, Richard Caldwell's holding company." Marcus set down 2 coffee mugs and sat across from her, "So he deleted evidence that would have cleared me. It appears that way. We're building a case for evidence tampering and obstruction, but there's more." Chen pulled out a bank statement. "David Brennan, the security guard at Ms. Pierce's building, received a wire transfer of $5,000 the morning after the gala. The transfer came from the same shell company. We interviewed Brennan yesterday. He admitted someone contacted him Friday, told him to photograph anything unusual Saturday night, offered payment for useful images." Marcus felt cold clarity settle over him. Caldwell set this up. He knew Evelyn would be vulnerable at the gala. He paid Brennan to document it. Then he deleted the footage that would show the truth. That's our working theory. But proving Caldwell personally orchestrated it is difficult. He uses intermediaries, shell companies, layers of plausible deniability. So what happens now? Chen gathered the documents. "Now we recover the footage. Our tech team is working with the building's security company. The data wasn't fully erased, just hidden. We can reconstruct most of it. And there's something else." She pulled out another document. "Ms. Pierce's apartment has a smart home system. Motion sensors, door locks, temperature controls, all networked and logged. We pulled the data from Saturday night. It shows one person in the bedroom from 12:30 until 6:28 Sunday morning. One person in the living room during the same period. No overlap." Marcus stared at the data logs and felt something close to vindication. "This proves I never entered her bedroom after I helped her inside. It proves your account is accurate. Combined with the recovered security footage, it should clear you completely. But Mr. Hayes, I need you to understand something." Chen's expression turned serious. "Even with proof of your innocence, the damage is done. The photographs and video are out there. Your name is attached to allegations that will follow you. Employment background checks will show this investigation. Internet searches will surface the scandal. Exoneration doesn't erase the record." Marcus had known this on some level, but hearing it stated plainly landed with devastating clarity. "So even if I'm completely cleared, I'm still marked." Unfortunately, yes. That's the reality of living in a world where accusation spreads faster than truth. They sat in silence while that truth settled between them. Jordan emerged from her bedroom, saw Detective Chen, and retreated without speaking. Marcus heard her door close softly and felt another piece of his daughter's childhood crumble away. Chen stood to leave. "I'll have more updates soon. The recovered footage should be ready for review by end of week. In the meantime, stay away from media. Let the evidence speak." After she left, Marcus sat at the kitchen table and stared at the coffee growing cold in his mug. Vindication was coming. Proof of innocence was being assembled. but the cost had already been extracted. Jordan suspended from school, Marcus's reputation destroyed, their financial stability evaporating. The careful life he had built from the ruins of Nicole's death was collapsing again, and this time he had no clear path to reconstruction. His phone rang. Evelyn Pierce. Marcus hesitated, then answered. "This is Marcus." Evelyn's voice carried tension and something that might have been remorse. "Mr. Hayes, I need to speak with you, in person, please." "I don't think that's appropriate, given the circumstances." I know how this looks, but I'm trying to fix this." Detective Chen shared some of her findings with me. "I understand now what happened, what I let happen. I need to apologize properly." Marcus closed his eyes and tried to decide whether Evelyn Pierce's belated understanding mattered when the damage was irreversible. An apology doesn't undo the past week. No, but it's a start. And I want to offer more than words. I want to help make this right. How? My daughter is traumatized. My reputation is destroyed. Your board saw me on your couch and nobody bothered to verify the truth before letting the story spread. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. "You're right. Everything you're saying is right. But please, let me explain in person. Give me that much." Marcus thought of Jordan in her room, of the suspension from school, of the fight she had gotten into defending him. He thought of all the ways this situation had cost her innocence and safety. But he also thought of the lesson he had tried to teach her about not turning away from people who needed help, about extending compassion even when it was difficult, about being the person you wanted your daughter to become. His voice came out weary. "Tomorrow. 2:00, here at my apartment. And Ms. Pierce, don't bring lawyers or PR people. Just you." "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." The call ended. Marcus sat with his decision and wondered whether agreeing to meet was wisdom or weakness, whether extending grace to someone who had contributed to his destruction was noble or foolish, whether teaching Jordan about forgiveness required him to forgive the unforgivable. He didn't have answers. He just had choices, each carrying consequences he couldn't fully predict. Evelyn Pierce arrived at Marcus's apartment Thursday afternoon wearing jeans and a simple sweater. No designer clothes or corporate armor, just a woman approaching a difficult conversation without the protective layers of status and position. Marcus led her inside and gestured toward the couch. He sat in the worn armchair across from her and waited. Evelyn's hands were clasped in her lap. "Thank you for seeing me. I know you have no reason to extend that courtesy." Marcus said nothing. Let her carry the weight of the silence. Evelyn took a breath. "I owe you an apology. Several, actually. That morning, when I asked if you had touched me, I wasn't asking Marcus Hayes. I was asking every man who ever made me feel powerless. That wasn't fair to you." "No, it wasn't. I should have believed you, or at least waited for evidence before judging. Instead, I let fear override reason. I saw you on my couch and I made assumptions based on stereotypes I thought I was too educated to hold." Marcus leaned forward. "You know what the worst part was? Not the question itself, but that your board was watching, that you had a video conference open and you accused me in front of the people who control both our livelihoods. You made me guilty by implication before any investigation began." Evelyn's face showed genuine distress. "I didn't realize the laptop was still connected. I had joined a call at 6 that morning for an emergency session about Caldwell's takeover attempt. I thought I had closed it. But I was hungover and confused, and when I saw you, I panicked. That panic destroyed my life. I know, and I've spent every day since trying to fix it." Marcus studied her, trying to gauge sincerity against performative remorse. "Detective Chen told me about the recovered footage, about the smart home data, about Caldwell paying Brennan to photograph me. She said you've been cooperating with the investigation. More than cooperating. I've been pushing. Demanding answers, threatening legal action against anyone who obstructs. But Mr. Hayes, I need you to understand something. Evelyn met his eyes with an intensity that seemed to cost her something. When I was 19, I was at a college party. I had too much to drink. Something happened that I don't remember clearly. When I woke up, I had to piece together what occurred from fragments and other people's accounts. I've spent 13 years not knowing whether to blame the man involved, the alcohol, or my own judgment. Marcus felt his anger complicate with unwanted empathy. I'm sorry that happened to you. That morning, when I saw you on my couch wearing my shirt that wasn't actually my shirt but yours that I had put on without realizing, I wasn't afraid of you specifically. I was afraid of being that powerless again, of not knowing what had happened to my own body, of having to ask instead of knowing. I understand fear. What I don't understand is silence while my reputation burned. Evelyn nodded. You're right. I should have made a public statement immediately. Should have told the board what I remembered, which was you helping me inside and nothing more. Should have demanded they investigate properly instead of letting assumptions spread. My silence was cowardice. I was trying to protect my position when I should have been protecting you. Marcus sat back and tried to decide what to do with her confession. Whether it changed anything fundamental about what had happened. Whether understanding her trauma absolved her complicity in his destruction. What do you want from me, Ms. Pierce? I want to make this right. Detective Chen will have the recovered footage within 48 hours. I'm calling a company-wide meeting to present the evidence publicly, to clear your name in front of everyone who saw the accusations. And then what? I go back to driving executives who will always remember me as the man accused of assaulting their CEO? Evelyn shook her head. I'm not asking you to return as a driver. I'm offering you a different position. Director of Employee Advocacy. A role I'm creating specifically to ensure situations like this never happen to anyone else at Northline. Marcus felt bitter laughter rise in his throat. You want me to work for the company that destroyed me? I want you to work for the employees who need someone with your integrity fighting for them. Someone who understands what it means to be wrongly accused. Someone who won't back down when powerful people try to bury truth. What makes you think I have any integrity left after this week? Evelyn leaned forward. Because you stayed that night. Because you helped me when you could have walked away. Because you're sitting here listening to my apology instead of cursing me out. Because your daughter fought someone at school for calling you a bad person, which means you've taught her that character matters even when the world suggests otherwise. Marcus flinched at the mention of Jordan. Leave my daughter out of this. I'm not trying to manipulate you through her. I'm trying to show you that you're exactly the person this position needs. Someone who lives their values even when it costs them. And if I refuse, then I understand. I'll still clear your name publicly, still pursue charges against Caldwell, still do everything in my power to undo the damage, but Northline will lose the chance to become better, and 47 other employees who have contacted me this week with their own stories of discrimination and injustice will lose someone who might actually fight for them. Marcus stared at her. 47 employees. Since this scandal broke, I've received emails, phone calls, written testimonies. People sharing experiences of being dismissed, harassed, discriminated against. Stories buried by HR for years. They're coming forward now because they see what happened to you and they're tired of being invisible. The weight of that revelation settled over Marcus. He thought about all the times he had overheard conversations that treated service workers as less than human. All the assumptions and casual cruelty that defined the corporate world he had observed from his invisible position. 47 people with stories that mirrored his own. 47 people who needed someone willing to fight battles that powerful people preferred to leave unfought. But he also thought about Jordan, about the cost of accepting this position. about putting himself back into the environment that had nearly destroyed them both, about whether redemption was worth the risk of further damage. His voice came out carefully measured. I need time to think. And I need to talk to my daughter. Evelyn stood. Of course. Take whatever time you need. The offer stands regardless of how long you need to decide. She moved toward the door, then turned back. Mr. Hayes, one more thing. When I said I was afraid that morning, I meant it. But I also need you to know that I looked at you and saw color before I saw person. I hate that about myself. I thought I was better than that. This week has shown me I'm not. I have work to do on myself that has nothing to do with corporate policy or legal proceedings. I'm telling you this because you deserve to hear me acknowledge my own biases rather than hiding behind trauma as excuse. Marcus met her eyes and found something that resembled honesty. Thank you for saying that. After she left, Marcus sat alone in the quiet apartment and tried to process everything. The job offer was generous. The salary would solve their immediate financial crisis and pay off Nicole's remaining medical debt within 3 years. The position would give him power to actually change things rather than just observing dysfunction from the margins. But accepting meant returning to Northline, meant working alongside people who had seen him accused, meant exposing himself and Jordan to ongoing scrutiny and judgment, meant trusting that Evelyn Pierce's commitment to reform was genuine rather than performative damage control. Jordan emerged from her bedroom where she had been drawing. Papa, who was that lady? Ms. Pierce, my boss, the one from the pictures. Jordan sat on the couch and studied him. What did she want? Marcus joined her and tried to explain in terms a 9-year-old could understand. She came to apologize and to offer me a new job, not driving anymore but helping other people who have problems at work. Do you forgive her? The question was simple, but the answer was not. I'm trying to. Forgiveness is hard when someone hurt you badly, even if they didn't mean to. Are you going to take the new job? I don't know yet. What do you think I should do? Jordan considered this with the seriousness she brought to important questions. Will the new job make you happy? Maybe. It would help people who need help. That's always made me happy before. But would we have to stay here, where kids know about the bad stuff? Marcus pulled her close. If I take the job, we could afford to move to a different apartment, better neighborhood. You could go to a different school where nobody knows what happened. Jordan brightened at this. Really? Really? But I need to know something. Are you okay with me working at the same company where all this started? Even if we move and you change schools, people might still talk. My name will still be attached to this forever. Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then, Papa, you always tell me we help people even when it's hard, even when it costs something. You said that's who we are. Yes. Then I think you should help those other people. The 47 ones who have bad stories, because if you don't, who will? Marcus felt something in his chest crack open. His daughter, suspended from school for fighting, traumatized by watching her father's destruction, still believed in the lessons he had taught her, still thought helping others mattered even when the cost was high, still trusted that her father's character was worth the consequences it attracted. He held her and felt tears he had been suppressing for days finally break through. I love you bigger than the sky, baby girl. Bigger than 2 skies, Papa. They sat together while Marcus cried quietly into her hair, and Jordan patted his back the way he had patted hers countless times over the past week. Parent and child reversing roles, both of them learning that strength sometimes looked like letting yourself break in front of the person you were trying to protect. Eventually, Marcus pulled himself together. Okay, I'll take the job, but only if you promise to tell me immediately if anyone at your new school says anything that makes you uncomfortable. I promise. And Jordan, I'm proud of you for defending me. Even though violence isn't the answer, I'm proud that you fought for truth when everyone around you was accepting lies." Jordan smiled, her gap-toothed smile. "You would have done the same thing. Probably. Which is why we both need to work on better ways to fight." They spent the evening planning their move, looking at apartment listings in neighborhoods with better schools and more distance from College Park, talking about what furniture they would keep and what they would replace, making lists of everything that would need to change and everything they wanted to stay the same, rebuilding from ruins again, the way they had after Nicole died, the way Marcus was beginning to understand they would always have to rebuild because life kept tearing things down. Friday morning brought the recovered security footage. Detective Chen called at 8 to tell Marcus it was ready for review. She offered to send him a link, but he declined. He didn't need to watch video confirmation of what he already knew. He had lived the truth. Seeing it reflected back through surveillance technology wouldn't make it more real or more vindicating. But Evelyn Pierce needed the footage for her company-wide presentation. The board needed it to justify reversing their implicit judgment. The court of public opinion needed it to move on to the next scandal. Marcus gave Chen permission to share the footage with Northline's legal team and tried not to think about hundreds of employees watching the most vulnerable night of his life play out on a conference room screen. The company meeting was scheduled for Monday afternoon. Evelyn called Marcus Sunday evening to confirm he would attend. He said yes, even though every instinct told him to stay home, to avoid the spectacle of his vindication being performed for corporate consumption, but he had agreed to take the position. Showing up was the first test of whether he could actually do the job. Monday arrived with the weight of reckoning. Marcus dressed in the only suit he owned, a charcoal gray outfit he had bought for Nicole's funeral and hadn't worn since. Jordan stayed home with Mrs. Patterson, who hugged Marcus extra tight before he left and whispered that Nicole would be proud. The drive to Northline headquarters felt surreal. Marcus had spent 3 years entering through the garage, taking the service elevator, existing in spaces designed for invisibility. Now he pulled into visitor parking and walked through the main entrance like someone who belonged. Security recognized him immediately. The guard's expression flickered with surprise and something that might have been respect before waving Marcus through. The main auditorium was on the 3rd floor, 1,200 seats arranged in rows that sloped toward a stage with a podium and a large screen. Marcus had never been in this space. Drivers didn't attend company meetings. They waited in garages while important people made important decisions. Priya met him near the entrance. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming. Ms. Pierce wants you backstage before the presentation starts." Marcus followed her through a side door into a narrow corridor that led to the staging area. Evelyn stood there reviewing notes, wearing a navy dress and an expression of controlled determination. She looked up when Marcus entered. Her voice was quiet. "Thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy." "No, it's not." The footage is comprehensive. 12 minutes total, edited chronologically. It shows you helping me from the hotel to my apartment. It shows you on my couch through the night. It shows you leaving alone in the morning. There's no ambiguity. Will that be enough? For the facts? Yes. For people's perceptions? I don't know, but it's what we have. Marcus heard the auditorium filling with voices, hundreds of employees taking seats, murmuring speculation about why this emergency meeting had been called. He thought about all of them seeing him accused, forming opinions, contributing to the narrative that had nearly destroyed him. Now they would see the truth. Now they would have to reconcile their assumptions with evidence that contradicted comfortable prejudices. Evelyn checked her watch. "It's time. You'll wait here until I introduce you. Then walk out to the podium. You don't have to speak if you don't want to, but I thought you should have the option." "I'll speak." "What will you say?" Marcus hadn't fully decided. The truth. About what happened and what it cost, about why assumptions are dangerous, about why we need to do better. Evelyn nodded and walked toward the stage entrance. Marcus heard her heels clicking against the floor, heard the audience quieting as she emerged into view. He stood in the wings and listened to her begin. Her voice carried clearly through the auditorium's sound system. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. I need to address something that has caused significant pain and confusion throughout this company." The screen lit up with the title slide, "Investigation Findings, Saturday, November 18th. Evelyn continued. 10 days ago, our driver Marcus Hayes acted with integrity and professionalism under circumstances that would test anyone. He helped me home from the company gala when I was unable to walk. He stayed to ensure my safety. He did nothing inappropriate. And because of a photograph taken out of context and a video deliberately edited to mislead, his reputation was destroyed." She clicked to the next slide showing the wire transfer to David Brennan. "This investigation has revealed that someone orchestrated this situation. Paid our building security guard to photograph anything compromising. Deleted security footage that would have immediately cleared Mr. Hayes. Created a scandal designed to damage both him and this company's leadership." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Marcus heard surprise, confusion, denial. Evelyn let them process before continuing. The screen showed the recovered footage. Marcus watched from backstage as 12 minutes of Saturday night played out chronologically. The hotel garage, the car ride through rain, the building lobby, Brennan taking photos with his phone, Marcus blocking the camera angle with his body, the elevator, then static indicating the gap where footage had been deleted, then smart home data showing separate room occupancy, then lobby footage from Sunday morning showing Marcus leaving alone, exhausted, worried. The footage ended. Silence filled the auditorium. Evelyn's voice cut through the quiet. "Richard Caldwell orchestrated this scandal to undermine my leadership and create grounds for board intervention. David Brennan has confessed to his role and is facing criminal charges for evidence tampering. Caldwell is under investigation for conspiracy and obstruction of justice." More murmurs, louder now. Processing. Understanding dawning. Evelyn turned toward the wings where Marcus stood. "Mr. Hayes, would you join me?" Marcus walked onto the stage. The auditorium lights made it difficult to see individual faces, but he felt 1,200 sets of eyes tracking his movement. Some curious, some sympathetic, some still skeptical despite the evidence just presented. He reached the podium and looked out at the sea of humanity that had consumed his name and reputation like entertainment. Evelyn stepped back, yielding the microphone. Marcus gripped the podium edges and tried to find words adequate to the moment. He thought of Jordan suspended from school. He thought of Nicole promising to stay and then leaving anyway. He thought of 47 employees with stories like his own. He thought of the lesson he kept teaching his daughter, even when the world punished him for living it. His voice came out steady. "I don't need your applause." The blunt opening created immediate tension. This wasn't the gracious forgiveness speech they were expecting. Marcus continued. "I don't need your apologies. What I need is for you to remember this moment next time you see someone being accused. Remember how quickly you believed the photograph, how easily you accepted the edited video, how assumptions filled the space where evidence should have been." He paused, letting discomfort settle. "My daughter is 9 years old. Last week she drew me a picture. Her father behind bars, her waiting outside. She thought I was going to prison. She got suspended from school for fighting a child who called me a criminal. That's what your assumptions cost. That's what believing stories instead of seeking truth does to real people." Silence. Complete. Absolute. I stayed that night because it was the right thing to do. I would do it again. But here's what I learned. Doing the right thing doesn't protect you. It doesn't make you safe. It doesn't guarantee justice. It just means you can look at yourself in the mirror without flinching. Marcus shifted his stance. Ms. Pierce has offered me a position as Director of Employee Advocacy. I accepted, not because I forgive this company for what happened, not because I've forgotten how easily I was dismissed, but because 47 of you have contacted leadership with your own stories of discrimination and injustice. Stories buried for years. Stories that needed someone willing to fight when fighting was difficult. He met eyes in the audience now, his vision adjusting to the lights. So I'm not grateful this happened. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm still processing the trauma my daughter experienced watching her father destroyed by lies. But I'm here, and I'm going to make sure the next person in my situation has someone who believes them. Someone who demands evidence before accepting accusations. Someone who understands that invisibility shouldn't be the price of employment. Marcus stepped back from the podium. That's all. The applause started slowly, scattered, then building into something that might have been genuine remorse, or might have been performative relief that the uncomfortable moment was ending. Marcus didn't care which. He had said what needed saying. The rest was their burden to carry. Evelyn returned to the microphone. Mr. Hayes's office opens next week. If you've experienced discrimination, harassment, or injustice, his door will be open. He reports directly to the board and has full authority to investigate complaints and recommend actions up to and including termination. She clicked to the final slide. Richard Caldwell is no longer associated with this company. The board voted unanimously for his removal. Law enforcement continues to pursue charges. We're implementing new policies for investigation procedures and employee protection. This should never have happened to Mr. Hayes. We're committed to ensuring it never happens to anyone else. The meeting ended. Employees filed out with the subdued energy of people who had witnessed something significant, but weren't sure what to do with it. Marcus stood backstage and watched them leave. Some glanced back toward the stage with expressions he couldn't read. Others avoided looking at him entirely, as if eye contact would require acknowledgement they weren't ready to give. Patterson found him near the exit. "Hayes, that was a hell of a speech. Thank you. For what it's worth, I believed you from the start. 20 years in Secret Service taught me to read people. You're one of the good ones." Marcus felt unexpected emotion rise. "I appreciate that. You need anything, you call me. Anything at all." They shook hands. Patterson left. Marcus stood alone in the emptying auditorium and tried to process what had just happened. Vindication that felt less triumphant than expected. Justice that came too late to prevent the damage. A new position that promised purpose but guaranteed ongoing difficulty. His phone buzzed. Jordan. "How did it go?" Marcus stepped outside into afternoon sunshine and called her back. She answered immediately. "Papa? Hey, baby girl, it went okay. They showed the video. Everyone knows the truth now." "Are you sad?" The question pierced him. Jordan could still read his emotions even through phone connection. A little, but also relieved and ready to come home. Mrs. Patterson made cookies, the good kind with chocolate chips. "Save me too. I'll be there in 30 minutes. "Love you bigger than the sky, Papa." "Bigger than 2 skies, baby girl." Marcus drove back to College Park with the windows down, letting cold November air clear his head. The city looked the same as it had 10 days ago. Same traffic patterns, same buildings, same people living their lives untouched by his personal disaster. The world had continued without noticing his struggle, without caring that an innocent man had nearly been destroyed by assumptions and manipulated evidence. But Marcus was beginning to understand that survival wasn't about the world noticing. It was about Jordan still believing in him, about 47 employees trusting him enough to share their stories, about Evelyn Pierce acknowledging her biases instead of hiding behind them, about small acts of integrity accumulating into something that resembled progress, even when progress felt inadequate. At home, Jordan met him at the door with cookies and a smile that reminded him why all of it mattered. They sat at the kitchen table, and he told her about the meeting. about speaking in front of 1,200 people, about accepting the position that would change their lives again. She listened with the seriousness she brought to important conversations and asked questions that revealed how much she understood, despite being only 9. When he finished, Jordan reached across the table to take his hand. "Papa, are you going to be okay?" Marcus squeezed her small hand and felt gratitude replace the exhaustion that had weighed on him for days. "Yes, baby. We're going to be okay. Promise? Promise." They spent the evening looking at apartments in better neighborhoods. Found one in Decatur with 2 bedrooms and a park nearby. The rent was $1,200 a month, but Marcus's new salary of $95,000 made it manageable. They filled out the application together, Jordan carefully writing her name on the line marked occupant. New school, new beginning, new chance to build something from the ruins of what had been destroyed. 6 months passed like weather. Winter gave way to spring. The apartment in Decatur became home. Jordan thrived at her new school where nobody knew her father's name or the scandal that had nearly destroyed them. Marcus's office at Northline became a refuge for the dismissed and overlooked. The 47 employees who had initially reached out became 63, then 84, then 107. He worked cases that ranged from wage theft to sexual harassment to the subtle discrimination that poisoned workplaces through 1,000 small cuts. Some cases he won, some he lost. All of them mattered because someone was finally listening, finally believing, finally demanding evidence before accepting accusations. Richard Caldwell pleaded guilty to conspiracy and evidence tampering. The judge sentenced him to 4 years federal prison and ordered restitution of $8.7 million to Northline shareholders. David Brennan served 18 months probation and lost his security license permanently. Vincent Shaw resigned quietly to avoid being implicated in the cover-up attempts. Evelyn Pierce remained CEO. The board, chastened by how close they had come to catastrophic injustice, gave her the autonomy she needed to transform company culture. Stock price recovered. Employee satisfaction metrics improved. The business press ran profiles calling her a reformist leader. She deflected credit to Marcus whenever journalists asked. Other companies noticed. By spring, 8 Fortune 500 corporations had adopted versions of Marcus's employee advocacy model. HR conferences invited him to speak. Law schools asked him to guest lecture. He declined most invitations, preferring to do the work rather than talk about doing the work. The media moved on to newer scandals. Marcus's name still appeared in internet searches attached to the allegations, but the articles now included updates about his vindication and his advocacy work. The stain remained, but it no longer defined him. Jordan turned 10 in late spring. Marcus threw her a party at their new apartment, decorating with streamers that she insisted needed to be arranged in rainbow order. 12 classmates came, filling the space with noise and laughter that made the walls feel alive. Mrs. Patterson drove up from College Park with a cake she had baked herself. The doorbell rang at 2 o'clock. Marcus opened it to find Evelyn standing there, wearing jeans and a simple blouse instead of her usual corporate armor. She held a wrapped gift, rectangular and substantial. Her voice was tentative. "I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to come, but Jordan invited me when I saw you last week at the office." Marcus stepped aside. "You're welcome here." Jordan appeared and threw her arms around Evelyn with the unself-conscious affection of children who forgave quickly and completely. Evelyn hugged her back, something unguarded crossing her face that Marcus had never seen in their professional interactions. The gift was a telescope. Professional grade, expensive, perfect for a child obsessed with space exploration. Jordan's eyes went wide. She dragged Evelyn to the balcony immediately to test it, chattering about constellations and planets and whether there might be life on Europa. Marcus watched them through the glass door. The CEO and the 9-year-old bent over the telescope together, pointing at the afternoon sky where stars waited invisibly for darkness. Something in his chest loosened. Not forgiveness exactly, not erasure of what had happened, but acceptance that people were capable of change when confronted with the consequences of their assumptions. The party continued around them, children playing games that made no sense to adults, Mrs. Patterson organizing a treasure hunt she had prepared in advance, laughter and chaos and the sweet normalcy of childhood celebrations. Later, after the other children had left and Jordan was showing Mrs. Patterson her new telescope, Evelyn found Marcus in the kitchen cleaning up paper plates and plastic cups. She picked up a trash bag and helped without asking. "I've been thinking about that night, not the gala, the morning after, when I asked you that question in front of my board." Marcus set down the stack of plates he was holding. "What about it?" "I realized something recently. I was so afraid of what you might have done that I never stopped to consider what you actually did. You stayed because staying was right. You helped because helping is who you are. And I punished you for it because I couldn't see past my own fear. You apologized already, multiple times. I know, but I'm not apologizing again. I'm thanking you for not giving up on me when you had every reason to, for taking the advocacy position even though returning to Northline must have felt like walking back into a nightmare, for showing me that integrity isn't just a corporate value we put on posters, it's what you do when no one's watching and the cost is high." Marcus met her eyes and found something that looked like genuine transformation. "You're doing the work now. That matters more than words. The company changed because you demanded it, but I changed because you showed me who I was when I thought I was someone better. That's the gift I'll never be able to repay." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence. When the kitchen was restored to order, Evelyn prepared to leave. At the door, she turned back. "Jordan's an amazing kid. Nicole would be proud of both of you." After she left, Marcus stood on the balcony where Jordan and Mrs. Patterson were still exploring the telescope's capabilities. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that looked unreal in their intensity. Jordan turned from the telescope. "Papa, come look. You can see a bird on that building." Marcus joined them, looking through the lens at the distant bird perched on a high-rise ledge, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time, just like everything else when you took the time to really see it. Mrs. Patterson squeezed his shoulder. "Nicole's watching too, you know. Probably telling anyone who'll listen that her Marcus turned pain into purpose." Marcus felt his throat tighten but kept his voice steady. "I hope so." Jordan grabbed his hand. "Papa, Mrs. Patterson says we should go to the planetarium next weekend. Can we?" "Absolutely. And can we invite Ms. Pierce? She knows a lot about space stuff." Marcus looked at his daughter and saw her mother's generous spirit, her own resilient joy, and something entirely her own that he was still learning to recognize. She had survived the scandal that tried to destroy them both. She had learned that the world could be cruel and that fighting back mattered. She had discovered that her father was fallible but still worth defending. And she had decided, with the wisdom children sometimes possess that adults forget, that people deserved second chances. His voice came out thick with emotion he didn't try to hide. "Yeah, baby girl. We can invite Ms. Pierce." Jordan beamed and returned to the telescope. Mrs. Patterson excused herself to start the drive back to College Park. Marcus stood alone on the balcony, watching the sun sink lower. He thought about Nicole and the promise he had made. Be their light. For years, he had interpreted that as staying strong, never breaking, never showing Jordan that her father was human and scared and uncertain. But maybe being a light meant something different. Maybe it meant showing her that darkness was survivable, that you could be broken and still rebuild, that doing the right thing sometimes cost everything, and you did it anyway because the alternative was becoming someone you couldn't live with. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his photo album, scrolled past pictures of Jordan's birthday party to the older images. Nicole laughing, Nicole holding newborn Jordan, Nicole in the hospital, weak but smiling, making him promise to be strong for both of them. He whispered to the screen, "I kept my promise, baby. Not the way I thought I would. Not without breaking. But I kept it." Behind him, Jordan called out, "Papa! I found Saturn!" Marcus pocketed his phone and turned toward his daughter's voice. The apartment glowed with late afternoon light. Inside, Jordan was adjusting the telescope, her gap-toothed smile visible in profile. The same smile her mother had worn when she was excited about something new. He walked back inside and knelt beside Jordan. "Show me." She positioned the telescope and stepped back. Marcus looked through the lens and saw the planet's rings, faint but unmistakable even in daylight. Jordan pressed against his side. "Isn't it amazing, Papa? Something so far away, but we can still see it if we look hard enough." Marcus put his arm around her and held her close. "Yeah, baby girl, that's exactly right." They stood like that while the sun completed its descent and the first real stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Father and daughter, survivors of a catastrophe they hadn't chosen but had navigated together. Changed by it. Scarred by it. But still standing. Still reaching for stars that seemed impossible until you remembered to look up. Jordan's voice was drowsy as she leaned against him. "Papa, are we going to be okay? Like, forever okay?" Marcus kissed the top of her head and breathed in the smell of birthday cake and children's shampoo and the particular sweetness of his daughter's trust. "I don't know about forever, baby. But right now we're more than okay. Promise?" Promise. The sky deepened to purple, then indigo, then the pure black that revealed stars in their millions. Inside the apartment, the telescope waited for tomorrow's discoveries. Jordan's birthday presents sat arranged on the coffee table. The kitchen was clean. The rent was paid. The future was uncertain but no longer terrifying. Marcus carried his drowsy daughter inside and tucked her into bed still wearing her party dress, because some rules existed to be broken. He turned off the light and stood in her doorway, watching her breathe the way he had every night since Nicole died. The way he would continue watching until Jordan was grown and gone and living her own life. But that was years away. Tonight, she was here. They were safe. The world had tried to destroy them and failed. That was enough. Marcus walked to his own room and looked at Nicole's photograph one final time before turning off the light. Her smile seemed to carry approval, seemed to say that she had known all along he would survive whatever came. That being their light didn't mean never going dark. It meant finding your way back even when the path was invisible. He whispered to the darkness, "We're okay, Nicole. Your girl is happy. I'm finding my way. We're going to be okay." The words felt like closure, like permission to stop surviving and start living, like the ending of one chapter and the beginning of something that might eventually look like peace. Marcus climbed into bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would go to work and fight for people who needed someone willing to fight. Tomorrow Jordan would go to school where nobody knew her father as anything except a good man who showed up to every parent-teacher conference. Tomorrow the world would continue turning with its mix of cruelty and kindness, injustice and redemption, darkness and light. But tonight, in this moment, they had enough. They had each other. They had survived. And that was everything that mattered.